shied away, one man took a risk to buy the cattle and changed his life and that of his neighbors.
For almost 6 decades, George Ndirangu has begun his day outside this shed with his cattle. His family puts his age at between 96 and 100 years, but despite the inevitable frailty that old age brings, George has stuck to this schedule. It is this that won him his independence as Kenya gained hers. The year was 1939. The colonial master had a firm grip on the country. Up until then, most farmers simply traded the surplus produce for what they needed. Now they needed money to pay the tax imposed by the colonial master.
Sisi tulikuwa wakalimu kabisa. Kama sasa huyo nataka oa. Akiwa nilika yangu namsaidia ng'ombe au mbuzi. Free of charge. Maana hana pesa. Ndio hiyo tunasaidia na mambo hiyo. Ikabadilika kabisa. Maana kila mtu alijua pesa ni kitu gani. Sisi tulikuwa hatujui pesa ni nini.
George was lucky. As the Second World War raged, the British government sought extra hands to help in the war effort. The military trained George as a mechanic. He left his beloved Kiambu and moved to Nairobi, where he lived amongst the British, ate with them and learned from them. By the 1950s, British nationals were beginning to leave the country to return home. A section of these had been farmers, and they faced the dilemma of just what to do with the exotic breeds of cattle that they had brought in.
Nafikiri walileta kutoka kwao. Ng'ombe hizi ile yetu ya hapana hii. Ile yetu ni ile ilikuwa nundu pale.
He saw a mzungu in Gilgil who was grazing, and he came back. He went to the wazungus then in the 1950s and asked for the permits. It was a process, and with some assistance of some wazungu friends of his, he got the permit, and he brought the first I think there were Jersey breeds in 1954.
And thus George set off. With barely an acre of land and a little shed, George scraped together the money to buy the cows and became one of the first Kenyans to venture into zero grazing. And as more colonialists left, so his herd grew. But as with all things new, there were hurdles to overcome.
By 1960, he was very stable, and since then he has never stopped. But between 1950s and coming to 1960s, there were a lot of ups and downs. There was a time he lost nearly all the animals because of outbreaks. But he soldiered on. By 1960, he was home and dry.
And as Kenya matured, so did the little venture grow. The changing political landscape and the developing infrastructure meant more farmers were willing to try zero grazing. He would lend a hand to another farmer who showed interest. Njenga Karume had heard what Ndirangu was doing and wanted to venture into zero grazing too.
Very many people from as far as Murang'a used to come to him just to learn and to understand how you do the exotic breeds. That was in late 60s and early 70s. Even here, there were very few people who were doing the hybrids.
By 1963, Kenya had gained her independence. A section of those who had fought for it then ventured into politics, but not George. He had found his place. It is this attitude that he would pass on to the next generation. His nephew is an independence baby. He grew up on the farm and today manages another branch.
These last 5 years, this business has shifted from old hands to young hands. And again, the prices of milk and milk products has really improved. It is now a business. It's not, a hobby for an old man going home for retire. It is a business. The market is huge. Kenyans are also now enjoying milk products, yogurt, butter, ghee, and all this. And I think the market is still very wide.
The farm as it is today bears little resemblance to the farm that George started. Technology has found its place here, and 26 cows, all hybrids of the Frisian breed, now graze contentedly in the small space. Similar operations have sprung up across the country, and many more flock to the farm for lessons. The man who sits and watches the world go by takes none of this for granted. This opportunity is what he and others fought for. His age means his movement is limited, but in his mind's eye, he sees far into the past, as far as the early struggles against the white man's rule, and he allows his mind to wander back to the present, to the fruits of that struggle. Wilkis Anyabwa for the 50-year series.